So the Ukraine crisis goes on, and this was really the day when the big wheels of global diplomacy began to turn. It all centred, though, not on the Ukrainian interim government, but on two countries, Russia and America, and on two men, Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, and John Kerry, the US Secretary of State. Let me bring you up to date on Sergei Lavrov's day. He's in Paris now, but earlier he was in Madrid. This is what he said at a press conference.
I would like to understand what you understand by pro-Russian forces. If these are the forces of self-defense that were created by the residents of Crimea, we do not order them, they do not get any orders from us. And as to the military personnel of the Black Sea Fleet, they are in places of their dislocation. Yes, there are some additional measures of extra vigilance were taken to provide the security of the troops of Black Sea Fleet. And as our president said, we will do everything not to let any bloodshed, not to any attempt at life and security of those who live in Ukraine, including, of course, the residents of the citizens of the Russian Federation.
There's Sergei Lavrov in Madrid earlier. Well, the West's response to Russia's actions in Ukraine will be decided by not just America, but also by the European Union. But what exactly are their options? Let's have a look. When it comes to sanctions, they could include travel bans on Russian officials. The West might also try to squeeze trade and other economic links. And there's also talk that the G8 could become the G7 by removing Russia. But we should point out there are differences between the US and the EU on exactly what to do. The Americans want targeted sanctions, but we know that France is not so convinced. It has important military contacts with Moscow. The Germans have ties as well. They import around a third of their gas from Russia, while the UK and other countries do worry about the impact sanctions might have on Russian investments in their country. Let's turn our attention back to Paris, because that is where the big diplomatic push on the Ukraine crisis has been taking place. Let's bring in our diplomatic correspondent, Bridget Kendall. Bridget, lots of different meetings, but of course the attention has been on Russia and America. Where are we with those talks?
Well, I think the good news is that they did actually take place. It's been a day of ad hoc diplomacy here in Paris. My impression is that the European and American foreign ministers arrived for... This was supposed to be all about a conference about the Middle East, and they knew that the Russian foreign minister was coming too. And they had sort of tentative arrangements to talk to him, but they weren't sure really whether Russia was in the mood. The good news is over lunch, informally afterwards, they were able to talk to him. And the Russian and American ministers had proper in-depth talks after that. And Western diplomats are saying that they think there may be chances to carry on those talks through this early evening, maybe late into the evening. They're not sure. They're waiting to see just how much they can do. OK,
well, let's turn our attention to Sevastopol. Ben, bring us up to date with what's been happening there.
Yeah, Ros, it's been another tense day here in Crimea, and we've had one incident in the last couple of hours which shows that tension, I think. The United Nations Special Representative, a man called Robert Serry, who's Dutch, a Dutch diplomat, he was here on a fact-finding mission. He was surrounded in Simferopol by armed Russian demonstrators, armed men. He was seriously threatened, in the words of the United Nations, so much so that he had to take refuge in a coffee shop to seek sanctuary there, really, to escape from these armed men. He then basically fled to the airport. He is leaving Crimea. He's been chased out of Crimea. So I think that's a very significant development, very worrying for the United Nations, obviously. Also, we've had the Russians effectively tightening their grip here. They've taken over 2 missile defense units in Crimea. One, a Russian army major, reportedly said to the Ukrainian troops inside, hand over your weapons, otherwise we're going to come in, get the weapons off you and give them to pro-Russian volunteer forces outside. So another tense day.
Thank you very much indeed.